To the story now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised young people of Langa in Cape Town that the ANC government will create 1 million jobs a year over the next 5 years, and that a rather 21 billion would be set aside to train young people. NGO Youth Capital has reacted to the president's promise, reducing it to political grandstanding. Project head at Youth Capital, Kristal Duncan-Williams, joins us now to unpack their views a bit further. Good evening, Kristal, and thank you very much for your time. So you're not convinced that 1 million jobs can be created in this economy, but in all fairness, all party manifestos have promised to create jobs. It's not just the African National Congress. I believe Build One South Africa even has quite a catchy phrase, a job in every home. So you believe that all these parties are selling the youth dreams?
Absolutely. I think if we look at the history to date, we've seen, President Cyril himself in his address, Langa showed that they've only created, just over 8 million jobs in 30 years. Just to say you're going to create 5 million in 5 years just seems like an unrealistic expectation. And as you say, it's not just the ANC, the other parties are making these statements as well. And the problem is nobody in their manifestos or even in their campaign have laid out exactly how they're going to do that. What makes their plan so different from what's been done and what's failed to have the impact that we continue to have this perpetual crisis? So we at Youth Capital believe it's because we haven't really taken into the account the lived experiences of young people, and we haven't come together cohesively with a plan to address that. Making grand statements or doing once-off kind of big campaigns or drives are not sustainable and aren't going to create the change we need.
If we had to be a bit more granular, in their manifesto, that's the African National Congress, priority one is putting South Africa to work. But they carefully word their commitment as creating work opportunities. They don't say creating work or jobs, it's job opportunities through, among others, the presidential employment stimulus. What is your interpretation, firstly, of the phrase work opportunities versus creating work?
I think that the ruling party has been very clever there, because no government in the world can create infinite amount of jobs. You really need the private sector to create those jobs. What the government should be doing is creating an environment that is conducive to economic growth, that leads to growth, and specifically leads to labor markets that absorb young people. So what the government can do is exactly what they are committing to do, and that's creating short-term public employment opportunities. And we at Youth Capital, advocate for those as a first work experience for young people. But that's not going to that alone won't solve our youth unemployment crisis.
But can we say it's merely short-term? Because they talk about supporting SMMEs, which is something that many have said for the longest time in the private sector, to also incentivize the private sector to take on these young people. So is that really short-term solutions?
Yes, and again, let's see us have the government put their money where their mouth is. So we have the employment tax incentive, and that is what many government officials were referred to as a way to say we're encouraging the private sector to hire young people. But all of the research to date shows that the employment tax incentive hasn't created jobs, and that actually only large businesses have access to the fund. Small businesses are not. Youth Capital's research that we did ourselves shows that only 2 in 10 businesses have accessed these government incentives. So clearly these government incentives are not working. We need to relook at them and repurpose the billions that are set aside for these incentives towards fostering growth in SMMEs that can lead to job creation long-term for young people. So you're saying among the solutions then is to support SMMEs, something that we've heard. Even the Minister of Small Enterprises has stated this on numerous occasions, that they're looking to do this because it's been proven that SMMEs have become the greatest employer because the bigger companies are in fact retrenching. So you say they fund these. What of NGOs and what of the presidential stimulus? Do you not believe that it's yielded some sort of positive results? Yes, as we head into the next political term, we're saying there are three key things we're going to be keeping government accountable to. Are these public employment programs? Do they work well? Are they funded in the long term so they can be strategic? And are they monitored and evaluated rigorously? Secondly, this idea about skilling. Are we skilling young people for the 21st century workplace? And how do we make things like NSFAS and CETAs work better there and get rid of the corruption there? And then lastly, supporting small and medium businesses. reducing restrictions on informal traders to allow the hustle that many young people, take up in desperation to actually become a thriving business, and looking at what pathways we need to equip young people to thrive as self-employed individuals.
You touch on a very important aspect, the skilling for the 21st century. It's quite topical. We've been speaking to a number of professors here who've said perhaps it's time to look at TVET colleges, and not everybody needs a university degree, because it seems we need the artisanal work, or some people should explore vocational professions. Do you think government is spreading the message enough that perhaps there needs to be that shift now when we have young people choosing perhaps where to further their studies?
I think it starts in a school and environment, and when many young people say the pressure comes from their parents, it's not coming from anybody else. It's their parents saying, TVETs are for stupid people, you need to go to university, it's the only way to create a future for yourself, and that's just not true. So I think we need better education around which qualifications at TVET, because not all of them are going to lead to jobs. Not all of them are required for the labour market. And so part of our advocacy is, saying there should be lists available telling young people what courses they should be taking up at TVETs and which ones are actually on the skills list and will lead to employment at the end of their studies.
All right, Kristal, thank you very much for your time this evening. That's Project Head at Youth Capital, Kristal Duncan-Williams, speaking to us.